So good evening, one and all present here. Thanks for joining the online panel discussion on leveraging data and analytics in digital transformation, organized by School of Business and Management, Christ deemed to be University, Bangalore. Before we start the session, certain housekeeping rules. Keep your mic muted at all times during the session. If you would like to pose any question to our speakers, as and when they are presenting, you may post the same in the chat. We are monitoring the chat. Once the presentations are over, there is a Q&A session where the questions will be addressed by the speakers. So we have with us our panelists, Sandeep Pandita, Nayan Dharamshi, and Supradeep Majumdar. I'm extremely glad to mention here that all the three panelists are the alumni of School of Business and Management from Kengiri campus. Now to the topic, the leveraging data and analytics and in digital transformation. Why are we discussing about this now? Digitization has touched and is touching every part of our daily life. In our workplace, shopping, travel, education, entertainment, and whatnot. Digital transformation as a concept arrived in the year 1990 with the introduction of the mainstream internet. This has sparked the creation of new business models and revenue streams. In order to remain competitive, organizations cannot avoid digital transformation. As the digitization process takes place, data begins to take a significant role. If we take the example of tech giants like Google, they have shifted from mobile first to artificial intelligence first. On the other hand, if we take a small coffee shop, deployment of Wi-Fi itself is part of digitization. Once the customers start using the services of these technologies in various scenarios, data gets generated. This data is further analyzed and insights are drawn. These insights help in businesses taking informed decisions to benefit their own customers. Some of the benefits achieved by organizations through this process is consumer behavior prediction, optimization of sales pipelines, streamlining supply chain processes, among others. Data about the customers, products, employees can be gathered, tracked, analyzed through the process of digital transformation. As in any other system, we are bound to have issues like quality of data, which means the timeliness, speed, accuracy, and so on, veracity of the data, security of data, data privacy, and so on during this process of digital transformation. Our panelists have assembled here to throw us more light on the various aspects of data and analytics while the process of digital transformation takes place. So with this brief, I would like to call upon the panelists to speak on the various topics. So our first speaker, Sandeep Pandita, is from the LOS batch of 2010-12. Sandeep completed his engineering degree from Bangalore Institute of Technology in the year 2009. He is currently working as a senior data architect at Ernst & Young, Singapore. He is a seasoned IT professional with more than 11 years of multifunctional experience in IT domain involving various technologies. He has worked with large projects across domains like banking, telecom, infrastructure, and government sectors. Today, Sandeep would be talking to us about data sources, data ingestion, storage, processing, and governance. Over to Sandeep.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction and the intro on the digital transformation. So, as Madam rightly said, that more and more organizations are becoming data heavy nowadays. You talk about Flipkart, you talk about Amazon, or any other organization. To give a few examples of the kind of data which is generated by the organizations nowadays. I mean, I'll quote few examples from IDC, International Data Center. They are the ones which keep stats of all the data. And one flight of Boeing, for example, if it's going from a destination from point A to point B, it generates 1 TB of data. Then now imagine if, for example, a carrier, it has around 50 flights and which are going from one place to another in a day. So just imagine the kind of data volume which is generated in a day. Other example would be Facebook. It has so many users and the users have grown exponentially over the years. And there is so much of data posted on Facebook every day. So to process this data, like even if we forget processing this data, even to store this data is a big challenge. So for any digital transformation to succeed, we first need to understand the importance of data analytics. So when we talk about data analytics, the first step in data analytics is no matter what you do and what is the kind of business you are into. So first of all, you need to understand your data sources and you need to ingest those data sources into your environment. So to get more into data ingestion, I'll talk about the kind of tools which were being used in the industry from the last 10, 15 years. So when I had started with these licensed ETL tools were very famous. Talk about Informatica or Ab initio, and there were few products from SAP, there were few products from Oracle as well. So what they used to charge around millions of dollars for these licensed products, and most of these licenses used to be core based. For example, Informatica selling a product to a particular organization, it used to be four core, and the limitation of ingesting the data, it used to be highly limited, depending on the license which you have bought. So to talk about licensed ETL tools, it was more of very expensive, and the performance also could not be improved after a certain point. If it has, for example, if the cores, maximum cores or the utilization of the server used to reach a certain point, you cannot improve the speed beyond that. Then after the era of these licensed ETL tools, then came an era of open source tools where Hadoop came into limelight. Lot of Hadoop adoption started in the industry in around 2020. There were a lot of companies which started using Hadoop. There was Yahoo was one of them. Like obviously, like things were started by the Google file system for the Google, and after that it was picked up by Yahoo, and gradually each and every organization started picking up the concepts of big data and started implementing to enhance their data performance. Right? So the first step, as I said, is data ingestion, where you ingest your data into the organization. So these data can be of variety of types. It can be the batch, you can ingest the data in a particular batch. For example, you have few loads which are running in a day. You are running a data load every hour to fetch certain tables or certain data from a particular point. Your various points from where you ingest the data can be a SMTP server, it can be RDBMS, where you can create a ODBC or a JDBC connection, and you can connect to a particular database to ingest the data. So once the data comes into your environment, then you can apply various rules on it. For example, one of them is the data quality, which is very important, because what we need to understand here, ingesting the data is fine, but we need to make sure that whatever data we have ingested, it is in the correct format, it's consistent, it is accurate as well. So to give 5 examples of probably which you would be able to relate to. So a lot of these CRM tools where the customer generated data gets inserted into the system. Like for example, somebody filling up a form in a UI, there are a lot of spelling errors, there are a lot of these address errors. So for example, somebody entering Koramangala, but the pin code mentioned in the address doesn't match to that location. So there are a lot of tools which are present in that space. Again, Informatica is a very good tool in that space, where it entirely focuses on improving the quality of the data. So to ingest the data, there are various cloud services as well. If you talk about Azure Data Factory nowadays, which is like widely used in the Azure environment, it has like more than 50 connectors. It can connect to all the databases, almost all the databases. It can connect to any file system, SMTP server, and you can establish connectivity to any data source for that matter. Then the most important part is once you have ingested data, you have ensured that the quality of data is maintained, then you need to think about master data management, because one particular chunk of data, it can come from various sources. Then you need to define the master data management strategy for the same, because you need to have a single source of truth. Let's say there are two different sources which we have, and there's a particular record or a particular data which is mentioned as S1, and in the source 2 it is mentioned as S2. But then uh, we need to assign weightages to all the sources. For example, if the particular source, the probability of this particular source S1 having the correct record is 70 and the other one is 30. So we treat S1 as the primary record, and that is something these master data management tools are very good at. They this is what they do. They run these algorithms and they have their own APIs which are embedded into the master data management tools, and they help us to figure out what is the correct data, and they help us to ensure that the quality of the data is maintained. So once we have done this, then it comes to the data processing part, which is very critical. So previously, we were having a lot of tools which we were using to process the data which we had ingested. For data processing, like if we have to segregate it into two parts, one is a batch process and one is a real-time process. Batch process is again where you periodically see those reports on your dashboard every 4 hours, every 5 hours, or even for that matter, every day. There are these daily reports which go to particular business and they take decisions on the basis of that. But now imagine a scenario where we are detecting a credit card fraud. Somebody took your card and he is swiping it somewhere in some other country. So we cannot wait for entire day for this record to get processed. So we need something which can get the record, process it, and give us the result right away, so that the fraud can be protected. So these are the various categories. I mean, if we have to segregate it, so batch processing is one of them, real time is one of them, where we take the real time stream. And when you talk about this real time stream, Kafka is one of the tools which is becoming very popular in ingesting this real time stream. And you can probably on this tool called Kafka Connect, you can literally have anything as the sink for it. You can put the data into HDFS, or you can put it into S3 or any other cloud storage. And now with the advent of this cloud computing as well, we have realized that if we have to process data, we cannot set up a Hadoop cluster, because it is very time consuming. If you consider the admin effort which is required for setting up a Hadoop cluster or a Spark cluster for processing the data which we have ingested, it takes a lot of time. Then these cloud providers, they came up with serverless compute. We just fire a query and it just gives us the results, and we don't have to worry about the backend infrastructure at all. So this is about the processing part. Now about the storage part. Storage part was mainly SAN and NAS were used for storing the data. It is there from long. It's there from long now, and mostly these storages are very expensive to maintain, and then you need to have a dedicated IT team which could like take care of it. But with the advent of cloud computing, we just hire an instance, or we can choose the storage we want. We can scale it to any number, and we can downscale it to any number as per our needs. When it comes to data storage, probably if you would have some exposure to cloud, you would have seen when you choose a particular storage, it is categorized as hot and cold tier. When you choose a hot tier, that means the data in that particular tier, it's going to be hot and it's going to be access frequent. So the charges for this storage tier is more than as compared to a cold tier. There are some other tiers as well. If you talk about AWS Glacier or Azure Archival, so the charges are very minimal. I mean, if for a hot tier, they charge around $30 for 1 TB. For a Glacier or any archival service, they will charge around $3, because the retrieval time for accessing that data is more. So to summarize it, so for any data analytics data pipeline, we first need to ingest the data, then we need to govern it, form those rules, make it consistent, and then store the data and process it. and then publish it to a queue or have a caching service to which the dashboard can access. So yes, ma'am. So you can probably take it from here.
Yeah, so the digitization, though it looked so simple for a common man, so much happens at the back end. And thanks, Sandeep, for making such a difficult topic sounds very simple and easy for us to understand. I'm sure participants are going to have a lot of questions for you. So now over to Nayan. So Nayan, our second speaker, Nayan Dharamshi, belongs to the batch of 2009-11 and he specialized in marketing. He completed his engineering from Sri M. Visvesvaraya Institute of Technology in the year 2009 and he has pursued his PGP in retail management from Institute of Management Technology, Ghaziabad and MBA from our university or Christ University in 2011. He is currently working with Kmart Group Australia. He is a data science professional with 10 years of hands-on experience in Python, R, deep learning, AWS, databases, and advanced Excel. He has the experience of leading diverse teams and working on product development and deployment in the retail and manufacturing domains. Focus of Nayan's speech would be on the analytics piece of digital transformation. Over to Nayan.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction. So I think the impact that digital transformation is causing us is in fact a lot more than we think, right? So businesses are adopting data and analytics, and they are changing their processes, and we are a part of this change, right? And I'll be talking through or starting my talk through a few such instances in which it's affecting various industries and various domains, not necessarily businesses, right? Start with in the smart manufacturing domain, or generally or batch manufacturing, there is a concept called digital twin. And what the digital twin is supposed to do is that let's assume there is a manufacturing equipment which is producing, say, for example, steel coils. There'll be a lot of physical processes and a lot of chemical processes that would happen into that machine, right? What we try to do is the digital system, which is a compute server, tries to mimic those physical and chemical processes outside of the machinery and within a digital system. This concept in itself unlocks a lot of use cases. Say, for example, asset health monitoring, right? So typically, every equipment is supposed to break down. It always has so much shelf life, and even though there have been scheduled maintenance and stuff, but this unlocks something we is typically known as preventive maintenance schedule, right? So let's say if the AI algorithms determine, oh, this machine is supposed to be breaking down in next 1 week or so, you take a preventive downtime on that, and eventually reduce the mean time to failure or mean time between failures. It's a very important metric that's measured in manufacturing, right? And as a result, the efficiency of the production floor stays high. One more example in this area can be the quality management of the process itself, right? And by quality management, what I mean here is, let's say, trying to get that or hit that golden batch in manufacturing with the right composition of raw materials, the process parameters, and etc., which eventually helps to reduce the variance between what is actually produced and what the specification to produce was, right? Moving on to BFSI, I think here I would want to call out a very specific transformation use case, say, and then this is an Indian startup that is driving this. So we've all been a part of the banking system, right? Typically, there's a bank, they have an online application where we can interact with the bank, typical savings, FDs, credit cards, etc., right? This is the core banking service that mostly every bank in India provides, right? Over the last few years, what has happened is a lot of fintech organizations have come in, and they are building a layer on top of these core banking systems, which enable a smart way of using the core banking services. So for example, the product that I'm referring to has a lot of AI and algorithms which give you, let's say, some of the saving trends, spending habits, or even some smart reminders to save or pay some bills and stuff, right? This is one of the services which is on top of the core banking. And there are a lot of other such examples in Indian ecosystem itself. Who does not know cred, right? And they're powering a lot of this through data if we all just think about and reflect, right? Moving to supply chain, I think supply chain could be anything which involves movement of product from, let's say, source to destination till it gets into the hands of customers. And a lot of technologies like RFID or product tracking to some of these autonomous robots are impacting the supply chain. This specific use case is, let's say, is taken from one of the Kmart Group Australia's implementations, where these autonomous robots move products from DC shelves to the racks so that these could be further processed to the stores, right? So this is an autonomous system. Earlier, it would have required team members to process the shipments, but now it's autonomous and eventually impact metrics like, okay, how fast could the product be delivered to the stores or to the customer's hands, right? And I've been always thinking this, sometimes even in India, I use major online e-commerce platforms, and even if I'm ordering at 11 p.m. at the night, I have the order in my hands at, let's say, 9 a.m. the next morning, right? So I've always been thinking of how does this work. So a lot of these predictive algorithms ensure that the product is available in the nearest hub based on historical usage patterns, and that's how it's changing the dynamics. Probably earlier, all of this product used to lie in the warehouse of the seller, but now based on these trends, things are possible to keep inventory at the areas where it's most likely to be consumed, right? Uh, in retail, I think that there are multiple use cases, but I would want to just touch upon Phygital, where this example specifically is from some retail stores based out of New York, or even upscale stores in Dubai, where as soon as you enter a offline store, right, you have a digital screen like what we see here, and you could choose some of the apparel, visualize yourself, maybe take a picture and see that. Even some of the Indian e-commerce have done that. Let's say Lenskart, you could just upload a picture and see how does the spectacle or eyeglass look on you, right? So it's a integration of the online and offline formats together, and it's both ways. You can go online and you have extension to the offline formats. You could go into offline and there's the extension to the online format. So that's why the terms phygital or multi-channel are getting a lot of importance over the last decade or so, right? Transformation is again not limited to some of the businesses, right? And I have specifically called out two other examples which are not business in itself, right? So in sports, let's say I'm going to talk about BatSense. It's one of the, it's actually a IoT or IoT device which could just sit onto the bat handle and could give a lot of insights about how's the performance of the player, right? It could give a lot of insights around the speed of the bat, the tilt angle, the contact speed, and various other things. And a lot of teams actually are using this to train their players, right? As to how could you always be at the peak of your game. And this is just the start of it, which is public. But then I think if you see competitive sports like football or cricket, a lot of teams use data and analytics to see how they could leverage a lot of data and improve the team's performance, right? The last one is very recent. So this is an administration example where this is taken from AIML team of Amsterdam City Council, where yes, they have a AIML team, and which essentially focuses on how could they improve the lifestyle of or for the benefit of the citizens, right? And about a week or two back, all the Amsterdam's canals were frozen, like one we see in the picture, and this specific team built in algorithms to see if a specific people who are just onto the canals are safe or unsafe. Maybe they have fallen down while skiing or just walking through that, right? So all of these use cases, if we quickly see, I think, and take a time to reflect, how would things have been done earlier versus how they are being now. And in a lot of these use cases, data, smart processing, and analytics is helping to take the insights and decisions that earlier would not have been possible, right? So moving on, these were some examples that I just gave, but I think a lot depends on, and it's eventually a journey, right? Transformation is a journey. And as I said, a lot depends on what's the maturity of the organization. When I say maturity, it is two parts that I'm talking of, right? Is how mature as an organization are we able to collect data? What is the quality of the data that is available? Do we have the capability and skill to manipulate this data or process this data and generate actionable insights, right? And on the second part, what's also important is, do we have the appetite to take these data and take decisions, right? Human change management is often not considered when technical implementations, but it plays a very important role. So and these use cases might not necessarily target senior management. It might also be operator on the manufacturing shop floor who needs to take decisions, and there goes a lot of change management into the process. So what's the appetite for the organization to implement that also plays a big role, right? In that view, I think I just want to spend a few minutes on what could be, or what typically are options in which it is used, right? So the journey starts from the inside. This is where usually you give historical number, right? Okay, on Black Friday 2019, we sold so much of inventory through our online platform. So that's an insight that's coming through. It's obviously historical, and it's a good insight to have to plan your future, right? As we move on, it might get better into a report. So report typically would be that you have a lot of metrics, maybe by different dimensions cut, and it's typically sent out in an Excel file or something like that. Dashboard might be a live collection. Let's say on Black Friday, you might want to have live sales, and dashboard makes that available where live data is feeding into it, and you see various visualizations that might help to take some real-time actions, right? I want to emphasize the last 2 points, which is the product and the service, right? A lot of organizations now are embedding AI and data into their enterprise products. By what I mean by that is, there might already be a product that is available, and AI or analytics, it gets embedded as a service, or in itself becomes a product. Say you might have a demand forecasting product that the team builds, and business teams get to use that, right? Or there might be a markdown product that you build and business teams use that. On the service part, I think this is where the microservices framework is driving this change, and multiple producers and multiple, let's say, consumers of these insights also is driving this transformation, right? So, for example, I'll take here is, let's say, personalization or recommendation. These two are very common services in e-commerce, and these are required by a lot of different consumers. Let's say marketing might need personalization service to recommend something. At the same time, it might be needed for the cart service to see, okay, if something's out of stock, what do I share, right? And some other teams might also need that. Let's say the demand forecasting might need the personalization or the recommendation service to determine how these impact in future forecasts. So that's where a lot of organizations are moving on, where they deploy each of these algorithms as a service, and which is open to be used by a lot of different teams. Obviously, just to call out, it depends a lot on the maturity of the organizations, both in terms of producing, consuming, transforming the data, while also consuming some of these insights, and how well they are intertwined with their tech organizations. I think this is not it. What actually matters is, all this is good, but then how does this gets implemented, or the real action is when the rubber meets the road. And I think one of my fellow panelists, Subhadeep, will be just talking on to that. But over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Nayan. and smartly. You didn't get into the algorithmic part, and you've actually focused more on the business problems in various domains and sports and other administration and other things. I mean, that's very important for any analyst, especially a domain expert, to understand how to frame problem statements and what is the problem they are trying to solve. If the participants have any questions, you can start posting it in your chat, as I mentioned earlier. We'll be monitoring the chat. Either you can put it in the public this thing also. I mean, anyone can see your question, or you want to put it in a private mode. Either way, it is fine. And thank you, Sandeep and Nayan. And now it's over to Supradeep. A brief about our third speaker. Supradeep Majumdar has passed out from the LOS specialization. He's a LOS student in the batch of 2013. He graduated in first class in BE in Electronics and Communication Engineering from Northeastern Hill University in 2009 and completed his MBA from Christ University in the year 2013. So he's been working as a senior manager, sales and operations at Target. His areas of expertise include forecasting, supply chain, demand planning and control, data mining, data analysis and management, dashboards and formulation of operational metrics. So Subra will bring in the outcome or insights which one would derive from analytics, especially from the perspective of the digital transformation. Over to Supradeep.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Hi, everyone. So, ma'am, are you able to see me and hear me loud and clear?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Sandeep and Nayan, to bring in the perspective, right? So, Sandeep really, very candidly, he put the data engineering part of things, which was awesome. Like I deal with data engineers in day in and day out, and this is what we deal with. And Nayan brought in like all the analytical products that is available in the market right now. A lot of I am from a very much retail background and supply chain, to be specific. But thank you so much, both of you, for bringing that perspective in. So as we go forward, right, and now what I will be talking about is more of, as a business person, how I will consume and how I will use that data platform and the analytics platform, and how can I take business decision, and how much relevant are all the different type of analytics that comes in day to day, my business life, right? And how much percentage of those actually goes through the pipeline and gets implemented, and we start using them, right? So think about it, when I say the road to profitability, right? So we have all this data and all this analytical products, but that should be like the business end of the day, runs on that bottom line, right? So they need to have that profitability, in their belt. And by using all of this, they have to become more efficient. They have to become effective, all the business decisions. So that is where, I come in, or basically as we need to first ask, like the first point here, like ask the 5 whys. Like whenever all these things come in front of me, right? Like all these analytical tools and all these analytical, data platforms and everything, I try to ask, like, what is that is impacting it, right? How much the supply chain velocity will increase, or how much of agility will increase, or how much I can scale the supply chain, right? And like this, like I'm talking about supply chain, but this is very much true across all the industries. And now in current scenario, think about India as a very growing nation, right? And there are a lot of SMEs, right? They don't have so much money to deal with, so many big organizations coming up with so much of product and all of these things. What they can do to leverage their data, what they have in their systems, to come up with that information and convert it into they do the analysis and come up with those insights that they can actually make their business more efficient, right? Those SMEs, for them, it's very, very important that 1 rupees is also very, very important for them before spending it, right? So, they need to really think and question themselves, right? How much of data do they need? How much of data do they need to gather even, right? It is very much possible that, once they go to the data engineering people, they might have 100 TVs of data, but they might not need all of them, right? So like Sandeep mentioned, like different hot and cold tires, they can actually decide that, okay, this is the most critical part and this is the thing which we need for an analysis, and readily available on a very, day-to-day basis or hour-to-hour basis, right? And this is what we need every time. So they can think about like that for, even going into and talking to the data engineering guys, right? Uh, these are all the, like, what am I talking about is more of a tangible thing. What is the intangible thing? The intangible thing here is the trust. Like, think about it. Will you be okay to share your company's data, right? So this is all about the digital transformation. Will you be okay during the digital transformation of company's journey to share your data with your supplier or your consumer to take a better decision? So that trust is really, really important. Like, how much you for all of this data driven world, the trust factor is very important. Because think about it, if companies don't trust their suppliers, they do not share their data with them, they might be in a soup, right? They might not even be more efficient, because supplier will send products anytime, and they would not know if the customer even needs the product, right? So think on those lines. And what I can see is there are a lot of students here. So whenever you're going into different organizations, and working in the future, you need to think like that, like like how profitable that one project can bring to the organization. What is the organization's goal? Does it even match strategically to organization's goal, or it is just going to get shelved, right? You can do awesome jobs, like you can do a machine learning project, you can do an AI project, but end of the day, that should drive profitability for the company, right? Now, my third point, do you have a specialized skill? Like, now again, I will go back to the Indian SMEs, right? Like, they are very much Excel driven people, right? From like quite some time now, they are really Excel focused guys. How much of specialized skill they require, right? To come out of that Excel, and when their data grows over that number of Excel lines, right? They have to sometimes shift from Excel to a different platform altogether to even churn that amount of data, right? After some time, your Excel won't even support it, right? I'm giving a very simple, very basic example, but this is what we need to think about, like going into like small companies and working from them. For startups, like, how much of money do they have to even spend on all of this kind of things? So, and then we need to also think about beyond this descriptive, like you have to think about, like, what is the diagnostic, what is the predictive modeling, what is the then comes the prescribe, right? So after all of this, descriptive is simple. Think about it, what has happened, right? Diagnostic is nothing but, why did it happen, right? Why did that action even take care? Would it have been it possible that that action would have taken care of itself, or there should be an intervention required from us, right? And then predictive is like, based on that, what can happen in the future. And the prescriptive, the last one, is like, what should I do, right? If something happens like that, what should we even do about the whole problem, right? So when I move to my next slide, I will be this is what, like, what I'm talking about, the decision making of using all those data and data analytics. The next part is, I will focus some time on, like, what are the current trends of 2021, right? And when I was talking to you about, like, Indian SMEs and on all of this, like, how can these terms really help them, right, to bring out that exact insight that they need with spending very less amount of money, right? So democratization is, it is basically democracy. Like, think about, it's like data democracy, right? So you are getting the data from, like, from the people, you are using them, and you are giving them the answer. So very simple example of it, right? The Arogya Setu app that you guys are using, right? Think about it. Like, you are giving in all the data. It is using your mobile to track all the person beside you or aside you, and then you are only sending that data to their servers, and then they are doing all the analysis and giving it back, right? Even they are giving you all the dashboards in front of you, saying that, okay, this is the number of COVID cases which is there today, and this is going up, or this is the active cases, and all of those things, right? So this is a very simple example of one of the democratization, right, which is done by the Indian government. Like DS Workbench and decision support tools, right? So DS Workbench is another example of democratization. Is like, it's you can think about, it's a GUI, right? It's a graphical interface, right? user interface, like the same thing again, like, it shows you, it takes all the data in, right? It churns everything and shows in proper dashboard, which the consumer can just see it and take a decision quickly looking at it, right? So similarly, like, what is explainable AI, right? Like, so think about it like this. Like, there were earlier days where we were using white box. White box, when I mean, it's basically statistic driven, very basic analysis, right? You do a lot of regression and all of those, and you come up with an insight saying that, okay, this might happen. Nowadays, a lot of big companies are actually talking about black box. Like, black box is, again, you don't know actually what it is. You just put in your data and it does something. Some engineers make it and then you just get out of it. Now, the new concept is the gray box. Like, you actually know what's going on there, right? Inside it, right? And say, for example, and I'm taking a bit of Nan's example there, like, a machine, tooling person who is actually doing the tooling in the floor, right? They have all their metrics in front of them, right? Like, what is the efficiency that they are working on? How much do they need to work more to gain the end of day efficiency? It's a very simple example, but these are type of data, data analysis and application which can be used in our day-to-day life, right? And it is more of like, think about it's a prescriptive model, right? I just gave an example of what was diagnostic, prescriptive, and all of those things. All of this comes in like a proper explainable AI. That explainable AI box will tell you that, okay, this is the problem, this is what the action you can take about it, and with this you will have this much amount of gain. So this is kind of an explainable AI, like, that I'm talking about. Now, monetizing the hype, right? How much of value generation? I talked a bit about in the first, but in general industry, supply chain industry now, 90, at least 5%, only 5% of the projects that actually are done comes and gets implemented at the end. So that is the amount of screening that happens to all the analytical projects that's coming in, right? So as a students, I think you guys need to be very much careful about what you are working on when you are in the industry, and you should definitely look at your company's goal, and does your project match those company's goal, right? And then you should go after it. So yeah, that's all from my side. Thanks, ma'am. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Pradeep. So with all the three speakers giving their own perspectives and their own piece of this entire topic, leveraging data and analytics in digital transformation. So we are moving to the next segment. That is a Q&A. We have questions which have been posted. So I'm going to start asking those questions. So the first question from Rupinder Damija. So hope the speakers are also able to read the question, but I'll read it for you. Nayan, could you please illustrate with an example why and where senior management may not be in favor of challenging the status quo, even though data may suggest otherwise? So yeah, for your information, Rupin, there is also our alumni 15-17 batch.
Yeah, hi, first of all, thanks for the question. I think it's a very delicate situation when senior leaders might not be open to challenge the status quo, right? And I'll take this in an optimistic way, which means there is specifically a reason why they do not want to make a change. And this is one of the situations that I've encountered in one of the use cases, and I'll want to take that as an example, right? So the situation is that we were working with a manufacturing organization to build a tool that would be displayed on the shop floors or integrated with what is known as manufacturing execution systems, or MES, right? And tool operators typically use these execution systems to determine the next best action, right? Which essentially means, okay, increase the temperature, lower the speed, change the, let's say, raw material, XYZ, could be actions, right? Now, given this, these are some of the recommendations that's coming from the ML system, definitely they're implemented. The rejects would reduce by X percentage, will be much closer to the golden batch by so much of percentage, blah, 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 right? So the numbers are all in favor. However, for any project to be successful, it's very important that you have the confidence of the end user, and in this it was the operators, right? And if the change management is not done in the right way, which we just sensed in during the POC phase, some influential operators might think this okay, this will take over our jobs, right? If it's able to tell that what to do, we'll be out of jobs in few days, or they might reduce the workforce and blah blah blah, right? And that is one of the areas where, as a senior leader, I think what you need to do is gauge, okay, what's possible to do and what we should just hold on, take the right change management, educate the operators that this is a decision support tool. It will help all of us, the entire organization, to become much more effective and increase our let's say operational performance, right? So that's one of the examples that I can think of, and is a very strong example on why not all technical implementations might necessarily be successful at the ground level, and it has a people component to that.
Thanks, Nayan. Hope Rupinder, you're convinced by Nayan's response. So I have a question to Sandeep next. Sandeep, this is from my side. So all of you spoke about a lot of real life examples and all of that. I see the data which is continuous, dynamic, and flowing within the organization. What do you think our future managers, how they should be equipped to handle this data? Are they not under continuous pressure while they are, when the data is continuously trending or flowing in? So what will be your recommendation, and do you have any scenario which you have handled data? I'm talking about the segment which you spoke about, right? The data ingestion, storage, and all of that. So can you throw some light on that? Sandeep, you're muted.
Sorry, ma'am, I was talking on mute. Thank you for your question. To answer your question, I have worked a little bit in telecom sector and little bit in finance. So what happens is, like, for example, if some anomaly is detected, let's say we are working for a telecom operator, and when we are analyzing the trend, and we have our application logic which is embedded, and all the rules which help us to identify what is a fraud and what is not. So if there is a activity which is not falling under those limits, or we can address that normally, or it can be even a fraud. So there are all these decision making which we spoke about. All that is automatically embedded. Let's say we have the data load which is like happening every day, every hour, and there is a set of report which has the access to go and block that particular node in a network. So more of the decision making is embedded in the application itself. So because if we leave it to the managers, or if there is somebody looking into it and then taking actions, there's more sense attached. Like if we get that decision making embedded into our application logic.
So, bro, I think you have to mute your. Yeah.
Another example, if we have to speak about, and I think I already spoke about the credit card fraud, right? So in case there's an anomaly detected on your spending, like you have been in India all this while, and suddenly after a few hours there's a transaction which is happening in some other part of the world. So this kind of transaction can be immediately blocked, and we have these streams of transactions which continuously flow with the help of various event streaming tools. And one of the like very good tools which is used in this event streaming, like to process these event streams, is Spark streaming, where we actually process the data on the fly and identify whether it is a fraud or not. So decisions are taken within seconds. So that is how it's adding value to the business. There's no point notifying the customer that your card has been already misused.
That's amazing. That's very interesting. I think I'm sure the participants would like to explore more on this aspect. So moving on, yeah, we have Supradeep. There is a question for you. I'm sure you would have seen that. I'm going to read for the benefit of the audience. So Supradeep, has it ever occurred when you have overlooked on any certain attributes or KPIs which has impacted the decision making? When do we know that the data we have is enough or sufficient? This question is from Devashish.
Yeah, Devashish, so, ideally in companies that does not occur. Okay, so think about it like this. So if I am doing any decision making and I'm doing any real time job of, taking any action on the supply chain network, right? What we do is we have our dashboards. Like, you need to build your dashboard in such a way that all your KPIs and all your attributes are visible, right? Like, it should be live and it should be visible to everyone in a very small, and that's how the designing of dashboards come into picture, right? You cannot overlook, like, that's the main part. You cannot overlook any KPIs for any critical decisions in supply chain or any other businesses as is formed. So this comes in, like, when Nayan was talking about insights generation and all those dashboards and things, that is a sub part of this. Like, when you are actually designing, and there are a lot of courses which is, dashboard designing and all of how do you design a dashboard and things like that. So those covers all of those things, that you actually keep your dashboard so intact and with all those major numbers popping up that you will not leave them. So second part of your question, when do you know that the data is enough or sufficient? For this is different for different type of businesses and different type of analysis that you are doing, right? So for example, if I'm in a retail or in a retail chain or in a supply chain, ideally what we look for is minimum 3 years of data. Like, that is what, if I am understanding your question correctly, I think that is what you mean. But if there is anything else you mean, like when you like enough or sufficient, like I would really like to know that, like, if there's anything else you wanted. But if you're doing any analysis or you want to come up with some insights, I think for on a retail side of things, like sales data or all of those things, you need a minimum of 3 years of data. Like 2 years is less, and 3 years actually covers all your trends and everything. So yeah, thank you. I hope I have covered that whole question.
So that's Nayan, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the first part of the question. So I think also what happens typically, right, is that there are reporting that every organization mostly do, right? Say, for example, if something is missed by, let's say, supply chain analyst while working on a specific root cause analysis report, right? Typically, there is an exception report that might run at a weekly level, and it's then the senior analyst or the lead manager who typically sees the exception report and tries to address it, right? So it's more of, again, integration of the processes that the organization has put in place and the technical enablement that is happening through some of these reports and dashboards that help that these things do not occur. Have they never occurred? Possibly they have occurred a lot many times in a lot of organizations, but organizations have found ways and processes to gap them so that to avoid the losses is what I would say.
Yeah.
Supra,
and on a lighter note,
yeah, you can go.
Yeah, so I was saying, ma'am, on a lighter note, you will get a call from your boss as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct. So this is a continuation of what you spoke, Supradeep. I have one more question. So you spoke about KPIs and dashboards. So always, when in my intro also, I did mention about the, what do I get out of this digital transformation, right? So do you suggest any the measurement or the, I would say the KPIs? What are the possible KPIs you can actually think of? How do you measure the benefit of digital transformation? Just to grow this for you.
Yeah, so I think there are always a trusted way of doing of, like, what is the cost benefit analysis, like do a cost benefit analysis and see that you also have to actually there are some tangible and intangible things, man. So you can actually check, okay, how much of value can you generate, how much of efficiency are you gathering, right? Efficiency is one of the metric, I would say. How much of monetary benefit you will generate out of it with saving, basically savings, right? Savings is what we look at. The intangible part which I covered, like, will the trust gain happen, or will you lose trust with doing that, right? So with sharing data or asking for even data, right? So those things are intangible things. So those cannot be monetized or anything, but those has to be like on a senior management level, they need to talk and understand.
That's right. That's right. So so we always speak about goodwill, branding, and all of that, right? So that cannot be quantified in some places. Yeah. So I can see one question from Yuvanesh to Nayan. Is phygital technology suitable for all types of retail? So you did have that in your slide. You did mention about the phygital part. So would you like to answer that, Nayan?
Yeah. Yunish, the answer to this would be, if I wear my technology hat, I would say definitely yes. It's just a matter of how do you get in the right phygital integration to any format of retail, right? It might be a very small format stores that you have, to very high volume big box stores that you might run, right? So from a technologist point of view, definitely it might be smart mirrors or digital integration in terms of kiosk to order products, enabling order online, pick up in store kind of processes and stuff, right? However, what's very important to keep in mind is typically all these decisions, uh, the business gets to decide on some of these things, right? So usually, and I'm just calling this out as how some of these projects work, is when you need a business sponsor to work on any of these cool business cases. So let's say if I go to Shubhra and say, Shubhra, can I work on this? And he would ask me as usual, what's the cost benefit analysis? Yes, we'll be spending so much dollars, but what are we going to get out of this, right? And if that is valuable and it impacts, let's say, maybe sales are going to get higher, our customers are going to be much more happier, then why not, right? And also keeping in mind, let's say, the volume that you typically drive, the amount of customers that visit your store, those things impact on what kind of intervention you might want to add there.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. I think you answered Yuvanesh's question. Sandeep, so the more from the data and analytics part, I'm actually looking at, you did mention about something called a single source of truth at the beginning.
Yes,
So you did speak about the real-time data which is coming into the business. So what did you mean by that? The keyword which you use, single source of truth. Are you talking about data veracity or the quality? What did you indicate by that?
yes, a single source of truth. I mean, if you are getting data from a lot of sources. For example, Sandeep as a record is coming from multiple places, multiple source systems. Then, if you see, then you have to consider one of the source systems which you trust more, and assign more weightages to it. And then they have these algorithms which run inside these tools to identify the record as whether it is the quality is not up to the mark, or it basically helps us to improve the quality of the data. So basically it's all about assigning the weightages to particular source system. Let's say we have 10 source systems, we assign weightages to them, and they have these products, master data management products have the algorithms which are embedded in them, and they help us to do that, to identify, let's say, one particular, if you trust that more, and it will probably give that value more precedence than the other one.
Yeah, I'm sure when you approach this problem, there'll be a requirement of domain knowledge as well.
Correct, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's more of, like there are, like, if you take any of these examples, right, of any master data management, it's a simple example of a pin code, right? Somebody mentioning his location as Kormangla, but he stays somewhere in Whitefield. So these tools are so intelligent, and they are already embedded with these APIs where they automatically get to know that, okay, there's something wrong with this record, and this address, the pin code is not matching, and they help us to rectify that.
Yeah. So yeah, that summarizes our panel discussion today. So we had this interesting topic of leveraging data and analytics in digital transformation, a quick summary. So Sandeep brought in the initial part, how the data comes into the business while talking about this transformation, and Nayan spoke about the various applications, where this data could be deployed and how data actually gets transformed in multiple scenarios through various domain examples. And Subro brought in the insights, the analytics to the insights drawn, and they were able to bring in the wholesome perspective to this topic. So what I understand is it's all about unlocking the value to our business, and end of the day, it's going to benefit our customers only. So as you can see from here, Jeff Bezos has mentioned, there's no alternative to digital transformation, and visionary companies will carve out new strategic options for themselves, and those who don't adapt will fail. So it makes very clear that you're going to be left in the race if you're not going to adopt. So adoption is the best strategy businesses should focus on. And more the adoption, I think more data, and more data, there is more scope for analytics, and that's what I see from this entire discussion. Thank you so much, the panelists, for being part of this journey, and for taking your time out on a weekend, and giving a good insight into this particular topic. I'm sure the audience benefited from this discussion from a varied perspective. The three speakers are from the various areas, and how they weaved the entire topic together. Thanks for being a nice audience, and thanks once again the panelists also.